you were speaking about the opioid crisis. General Bondi has recently announced that she's going to bring a lawsuit on behalf of the state of Florida against drug makers. Is that something that you support?
Absolutely. As a member of the Florida House, I do not have subpoena power, so obviously I haven't seen the evidence that she is seeing. I think it's a fantastic start for something I want to continue. What I think we all see is we all see a lot of smoke. We all see, and I think there's got to be some fire there, and certainly worthy of the state's investigation. The costs on the state are just tremendous, and they'll continue for decades. So there's a fiscal case, there's a moral case to look at distributors and look at manufacturers. I think about the Medicaid fraud unit in the Attorney General's office, which is doing a very good job, kind of partner with ACA on the investigative side. We do a good job. That's a massive data set that can probably be mined as well to see where there's potential liability.
Besides being the chief legal officer of the state of Florida and representing the people of Florida in courts throughout the state and the country for that matter, you also as Attorney General sit on the cabinet. We talked this morning with our Agricultural Commission candidates about the fact that we have this system of government where we share power, share sort of the power that in other states is reserved just to the governor among many people in the cabinet. Tell us about what you think about the cabinet and your role and what you would do as a member of the Florida cabinet.
Yeah, it's unique. It's certainly unique to Florida, and it's it's one where the very important part of the job. I think a lot of people have been kind of lulled into at least on the Republican side of the aisle, have been sort of been off the radar because we've had good government led by Governor Scott through the cabinet. It is a critical part of the role. One obvious issue where I think we can improve is the clemency, how we handle clemency in the state. There's clearly a federal judge several weeks ago, and I don't know that I agree with his legal analysis that it's unconstitutional, but clearly there's a problem with how we handle clemency in the state. So that's one of many areas where I think as a cabinet we can improve.
One thing that TaxWatch has been looking into is the size of the prison population of Florida. We've done research on identifying specifically the elderly prison population. As the country grays, the baby boomers go into retirement, you also have a graying prison population, and the cost of keeping people in prison is extraordinary. And as you know, in the legislature, the revelation that most folks have when they come to Tallahassee in the legislature is, well, we're going to have all this money to spend, and then after you do Medicaid and prisons and K-12 education, there's not much money left over. What are your views on trying to reform the criminal justice system to make it efficient and effective for the taxpayer as well?
There are absolutely opportunities to reform the criminal justice system, and I applaud TaxWatch for its good work in identifying some of those. In Florida, we have unfortunately not been a leader in this area, and I think there are some opportunities where we can improve. You identified one with one where we can do supervised release and other things where we can try to get folks who clearly are not a threat to society anymore, who are older, infirm, they can maybe move in with family and through a supervised program. Authorities will be kept safe. It's common sense. Other particular policy areas, things I've worked on in the legislature, co-sponsored a bill this year. Unfortunately, didn't make it, but it would have raised the felony threshold. That's 1980, mid-80s, 86, I think was the last time we changed our felony threshold. It was $300. If somebody steals my lawnmower costs more than $300. So should that be a felony? I don't think so. It wasn't in the late 80s, 90s, but today, I don't. Maybe then, today it shouldn't be. So I supported that legislation. I think that's one of a number of areas where we can do better. And the phrase I heard that I think is spot on is we need policies that are smart on crime but soft on taxpayers. There are whole plethora of issues we can talk about.
Give us a sense of your first 100 days in office. You are elected, it's January, you're sworn in on the steps of the Capitol, and now you have to govern in the Attorney General's office. Tell us what the first 100 days of your time as Attorney General looks like?
I think that the first job is, this is, I think, something that's unique to my background. I'm the only candidate that's been a part of leading business. For the last, in addition to being in private practice, for the last 8 years, I have been part of the executive team managing a large business operation. We have 10 dealerships, we're in 3 states, 650 employees, and the first thing you do is figure out that you have the right people in the right seats. That they're not folks who can share the vision, and I don't mean a partisan vision. I mean just a vision for priorities of the office, vision for the vision of the issues I really want to work on, and make sure that the right folks are in the right seats. The way I would do that is, first and foremost, make sure that we have the best talent we can find. A mix of experienced attorneys in the office, seasoned attorneys in the office, been there, done that across administrations, and then also going to recruit the best young talent we can find. And I think when you can mix those two together, good things will happen. One other aspect that is, I think about those first 100 days of my approach that was critical staffing decisions. So much of our society has gotten so complex. I mean, I think about an attorney trying to understand my own industry, much less the hundreds, dozens of thousands of industries in Florida. There's so much complexity that you really define where you can folks with experience in that industry, or just a sense of what the norms are in those industries, so that you can, on the civil side of the office, when you're looking at prosecuting, when you're looking at filing a lawsuit, using your subpoena power on the civil side, that you're going after somebody for fraud, for something that really is fraud, and that expertise in the industry, I think, is important.
Let me open it up to the audience for any questions for our guest. Principal, we're going to start with you first every time. She's come with her prepared questions, Representative.
I represent a lot of constituents in Palm Beach County, and I'm on a lot of boards, so they give me questions, and I have questions too. Thank you, Representative, for coming out here. I have a couple of questions. One is about human trafficking. We know now the Attorney General, if you become Attorney General, how will you bring about educating middle school and high school students about human trafficking? It's not enough. I have, in my school particularly, I do every year, we have attorneys when it comes to only Law Week that comes and talks about our middle school students about human trafficking, because it's such a big issue in our county, Palm Beach. But how, if you become an Attorney General, how would you put this more emphasis or more money having people coming in and talking about it to the middle and high school students?
That's a great question, and certainly one. We do need middle school, high school kids to know about human trafficking. A lot of times, they can. One way in particular, I know that in Palm Beach, the sheriff recently, you've got a very good app. I forget the name of it, but an app where kind of see something, say something, reporting. As I was looking at it a couple of weeks ago, and human trafficking isn't one of the options to report, right? So I think clearly there's an opportunity for education. So your bar has lawyers who during Law Week, and that's an idea to get them into the schools to educate. I will say I think Palm Beach is tackling the problem of human trafficking well. I think there are things you guys are doing well. I was at a coalition meeting last week and heard a few things you're doing. I met a survivor. So Palm Beach is a leader, and so I think that's one of the things the Attorney General can do is recognize areas that are doing well, what's working in your area, and then share it with the 66 other counties.
Okay, my last question deals with the marijuana dispensary. Knowing that there is a law that no marijuana dispensary is allowed to be in front of a public school, has to be more than 500 feet. What do you do with existing marijuana dispensaries that were grandfathered in front of public schools that I know in Palm Beach County? What is your take on that?
I think that's the issue that, and I don't know if I have to review the law between whether it's a county ordinance or whether it's something in our legislation that resulted in that situation. I don't like the idea of it being right across from a school. just in general, but it's really a policy matter for the legislature. I can say that one tool that I do want to use, to provide efficiency in the justice system is use the ability to write an Attorney General's opinion. There are kind of some standards and norms that the Attorney General will follow of restraint and how that tool is used, but it is a way where if the law is unclear, and that's one thing we do in the legislature a lot is if we write a bill that preempts, it's not always clear that the legislature is preempting, right? And so the Attorney General can use that opinion in a way to provide clarity on an issue. Unfortunately, as Attorney General, I won't say unfortunately, the job isn't to necessarily make law. The law is to provide clarity where you can interpret it and then enforce it as part of the executive branch.
Andy?
You talked some about your business background as a comparison and contrast to the other candidates in the Republican primary. I'm wondering if there are other areas of contrast that you'd like to highlight against in the Republican primary.
Yeah, I think first I would start with the business background. Second, I've been a principled, consistent conservative my entire life. I believe in generally restraint in government. I believe in restraint by our Constitution, and so the respect for all of the entire Constitution, either their enumerated rights, every one of them, all the way to that the structure that is set out by both the United States Constitution and Florida's Constitution. It's stood the test of time, and so when I say I've been a consistent, principled conservative, that's what I mean is respect for that structure. Teasing out a little bit, the things that are really going to get that I'm really going to focus on is where I see that structure under threat, right? So during the Obama administration, the laws of the United States reinterpretation was something that that many attorneys general, our own included, identified as clearly the federal government getting out of its lane and a federal agency getting outside of its lane and taking away state authority. I think there will be opportunities to do the same even under a Republican administration. Second, I'd say especially if we, I do hope we do continue to have Republican government across the cabinet, that there's going to be a unique challenge for an attorney general to, when we talk about the rule of law, it's going to be, there are going to be some unique challenges where everybody's a Republican. It's still the job to stand up for the rule of law. And then what I mentioned about kind of the civil side of the office and knowing the impact, so an approach to that judgment and that discretion that's necessary whenever you do exercise that tremendous power, that tremendous discretion given under the Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Act and other parts of the job. If you're going to intervene, it needs to be fraught. It needs to be clear, and an approach that isn't necessarily for headlines or trying to get name ID up for the next run for office, but an approach that is about understanding that there's a role to play to ensure there's a free, open, fair marketplace and respect for that power.
Representative White, thank you for coming. And I want to thank you personally for your commitment to abuse, abandonment, and neglected children. You and your wife are wonderful champions. We appreciate that. Speaking of that, so in the world of child welfare, foster care adoptions, we intersect a lot with the courts and the legal system. The federal government is now coming in with an understanding that they're wanting to really push to do a primary prevention. I'd like to hear what you think that you can do from your office position to be able to help in getting into these communities and keeping kids from coming into the system and certainly getting in deeper into the system.
Yeah, fantastic question. The first thing I want to hear from experts like you. I want to know what policy proposals, and that's something I look forward to doing is areas where the Attorney General would have perceived expertise, being a voice for positive change. We need, I would say just generally, we need solutions that fit Florida, and so federal law oftentimes constrains us. So as part of as I'm all for, I'd rather start early. So as those policies are being formulated at the federal level, I want to engage there and make sure that we do have the proper flexibility to make sure that whatever they do come with fits us.
Good morning, Dean Ridings with the Florida Press Association. You can see behind you, Florida TaxWatch is proud to be part of this government watchdog. Part of the role of the Attorney General's office is to take care of the Office of Open Government. And open government is very important. Transparency is very important to Floridians and to business. What's your view on transparency, and how would you make sure that the Office of Open Government continues to play that active role? Thank you.
You said it best. Open transparency is it's one thing we do well in Florida, and it's especially important as the headwinds face traditional industry and journalism, that we need to continue to have transparency. Two specific ways things that I think we can do. One, I would step in and champion public policy proposals that do offer transformative open data, right? So, big example, we passed a criminal justice data transparency bill this last legislative session. The governor signed. We will be, once it's implemented, the national leader on data transparency for criminal justice. For me, if you want to do something truly transformative in public policy, it has to start with evidence-based research. That's, I think probably I may have just stated a mission statement for TaxWatch. That's something you all have done very well for decades. So, in the criminal justice arena, I think we're on a great start, right? And so that sort of open data where presently you have 67 counties collecting a whole variety of data, and it's tough to get, it's impossible to get. Now it's all going to be on a website, and it's going to be available to everybody to access and see all of those kinds of issues that legislators will want to answer. Who's in jail? Why are they in jail? Is it pretrial defendants who are mostly in jail? Who gets who gets 3 years and who gets probation? All of those kinds of things that the legislators will want to know. That's that's an area where I'm championed as a legislator. I think as Attorney General, you can stand up and do the same on the many ways we can have transparency across government. I was a founder of our technology caucus in the Florida House, and one idea that a colleague of mine, Representative Jamie Grant, has pushed for that I love is open APIs, so across government that would allow the marketplace broadly to tap into government data and innovate around in ways we can't even predict. I think I'm all for open data, all for open government. It's part of securing our democracy.
Representative, first of all, thank you for your current and continued service to the people of Florida. Follow-up to Dean's question is really about, I've got two. One is about smart justice, but the first one I want to ask is regarding open government. There's been some challenge from time to time in the thinking that if we just put all public notices on the website, they'll save the day, save money and all that. Unfortunately, it's a view of Florida TaxWatch that it will actually impair public notice because we now require part of law. We have a standard law now that is a nationwide standard. But I want to know what your view is about that. We really want to make sure we continue to have legally public notices in newspapers of record as well as online. That's one question. The other one, which is broader and really more important, Florida has great opportunities, particularly being a transient state in the area of smart justice. Not just to save money, but most importantly to improve public safety. Because when people go to prisons, it's often crime colleges. We've got the prison industrial complex. And Texas has really been on the job with this one early on. We're really proud of Robert and Bob, Nate, and our whole team for doing this for a long time. But I'd like to know your thoughts on that as Attorney General, to take the mantle, really move smart justice or criminal justice and juvenile justice reform to the extent that you can. because such is saving money and lives, but also communities, because when people are in jail, they're disconnected, the whole family goes to jail. You know, wherever someone of that family is. And so when they come back, there needs to be a real bridge back to their community so that those broken lives are healed. So what can you do, what do you think would be appropriate as Attorney General to really advance on public notice and secondly, smart justice?
I think that, first, in terms of public notice, I have a record on the issue. 2 times it's come across in kind of the legislature. The first, I sponsored a bill that one of those pieces of legislation that the world will no longer remember. But I rewrote our fictitious name statute. So it was the first bill I passed that was signed into law as a brand new rookie for my friends in the division, the business law division. And in there, we require public notice for a fictitious name. I got some pressure from some colleagues to pull it out. Kind of considered it because, as you know, I'm always kind of have a feeling. Is anybody ever read this stuff? What's the purpose? Is it just sort of a transfer fee, sort of thing? A unnecessary cost imposed. I didn't, because I didn't have a full appreciation. I felt that was, again, that sort of restraint, I think, as a conservative perspective. Something that's always been there, and I didn't have the time to come up with a better mousetrap to do it that would have actually accomplished the same goal that maybe would have saved some costs. The second time was a bill this last session where in an early committee we heard a bill related to storage of public property. And I voted for that bill, had some reservations about it, but it was more about moving the dialogue forward. So public notice is absolutely important. I'd say as Attorney General, is it something that I'm going to weigh in on policy debates? Probably not. I think there are other it's better left, I think, to the legislature to focus on an issue like that. The second question about smart justice, there are absolutely things that we can do. I mentioned one, increasing the felony threshold. I mentioned that I think we do there's some good things on the county level with drug courts, with pretrial diversion programs. We can find things that work, and I can absolutely want to weigh in on the legislature to try to expand those across the state. You're right. Your point's right that our prisons do not do a good job of preparing people to leave, to reenter society and be around all of us all the time. I mean, we can do better. This last session sponsored an appropriation for a prison provider in the state. Based when I looked at it, there had been a couple of years of data that in a state facility operated by a private operator, where they had a program called Continuum of Care that had actually provided a lot of different resources, a lot of different services in education to inmates. And after just a couple of years of data, and then even better yet, they paired it with a call center and dollars after the fact, whenever folks do reenter society, that their only means for survival is turning back to crime. We need to do a better job, and so that's one thing I could point to that I've done in the legislature, and I just it's common sense. I mean, it's something that we can do better, particularly in the state system, and I mean, lean on to try to get more resources to allow reentry programs to work. Recidivism is what it is, the statistic, maybe a quarter return to prison within 3 years. Other states are doing better on recidivism, and I think we can too. I think a big part of that is reentry.
Yeah, the real question is, so many times elected officials are concerned that if you let that one person out, that could be really, whatever that person was.
Right. Really working.
And even a medical
doctor in, I think it was Connecticut, I think. He was a victim. His wife was killed, family killed. And yet he did say it's still important to make sure that we have some not only civil justice, but restoration at some point, because hanging on to that is really harmful to the human soul. But more importantly, it really destroys communities. So we've got to look beyond the short-sightedness of lock them up, throw away the key, because it appears to be safe, but it's really not long-term, because we have two things that stand in the way: the U.S. and the state constitution. They're going to get out.
Right.
And when they get out, and you're in a darkened theater, we want to make sure they've gotten the rehab, the mental health counseling, the substance abuse challenge changes and so forth. They become renewed men mainly, because they're women, but mainly men. So it's important though, because the Attorney General has that mantle. I think can really help lead, not all the details, but lead the basic fight to make sure we move this way. So, thank you.
You're right. Thank you. And just as we go to the next question, I'll make the point that as a representative and working with constituents, every few months I'll hear from a family member who is just in a family member attempting to visit, do what I think everyone wants to happen. A family member going to visit somebody in their family in prison, and the barriers that and it's not state and it's federal, that we made it extremely hard for that to happen. Part of it is just is cost-based, where people have particular threat levels need to be only at certain facilities, but it's also just probably not been a policy priority to make sure that families are actually near and can visit their loved ones who are in prison. It's as a Republican, one of we talk a lot about family and look for solutions policy solutions that will strengthen families. If that person's going to have any success re-entering society, it's going to be critical that an important factor. I don't have to see the research to tell you this. It's going to be important that they have that family support while they're still in the facility.
He's back there. Leave the mic.
Representative, our time is done. Thank you very much. Best of luck.
Just make him sit down.